What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another Grimlock video. Today we are going over the 10.2.5 PvP tier list video, and the reason why I'm doing that today is because on Tuesday or Wednesday, if you're in Europe, they're coming out with a patch that has some pretty significant PvP changes, and I think it'll change a little bit of how the game plays, but not too much. But yeah, we're going to incorporate those changes into my mindset and my thoughts on how I'm going to lay out this PvP tier list. And I hope you guys enjoy that. And if you do enjoy it, please make sure to like, subscribe, and write a comment down below. I like hearing from each and every one of you. I like hearing your opinions too. So please make sure to drop those down below. And I will see you guys soon. Let's get right into it. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to go over in this video was the breakdown of people's ratings. So I know a lot of people make tier lists from the point of view of a rank 1 or a Gladiator player. I know a lot of the time when I make a tier list, I think at the highest level. But if you look at the breakdown for the rating distribution, you'll see that the majority of players are actually in the 1600 range, 1500 to 1700 range, and also like 19-ish, like this range here is where the bulk amount of players are. So I think I'm going to keep that in mind with this tier list video and moving forward in the majority of my tier list videos. I know Skill Capped came out with a video recently, and they did that, and it had a great impact on a lot of you players, and that makes sense to just make the video around the average player. So yeah, we're going to keep that in mind when we do this tier list, and I hope you guys enjoy that. So yeah, let's get actually into the tier list now. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that before we got into it. Alrighty, guys, so this is the tier list. We have S, A, B, C, and D tiers. Obviously, S is the supreme level. They're insane classes. Probably you'll see some of these classes in the AWC coming out in less than a week. So guys, let's get right into it. I think I'm just going to place immediately the tanks in D tier for right now, and the reason I'm doing this, I know some of you guys play tanks, but I'm gonna place them here because I plan on this tier list kind of affecting more so the arena and solo shuffle style players. So yeah, we're free in Prop Pally. So yeah, there's the 6 tanks, toss them right up in there, and yeah, so before we begin, I want to explain the patch coming out this Tuesday. The PvP changes specifically. Cloth specializations are gaining an additional 35% armor when in arenas and in battlegrounds, and plate specialization classes now have their armor reduced by 30% while in arenas and battlegrounds. And then the 2-piece set of Gladiator's distinction for damage dealers and tank rolls is going up to 15% stamina, which it used to be 5. So every damage dealer in the game is getting 10% stam passively, which is pretty insane. And then healers are also getting 5% stamina passively, which is also really crazy. So I would expect the game to kind of move towards a little bit more of a dampener, but not quite as much dampening. If anything, it would be a little more dampening for like the caster cleaves, like wizard cleaves, something like Mage Druid. That would be a pretty dampener type comp right now, most likely, even though they do significant amount of damage. Also, like Shadow Play, super tanky comp, can run the long game, can run the short game, so that comp will be pretty gross as well. But you know, we'll see. So let's get started on the tier list. First things first, we have Arms Warrior. Arms Warrior is always pretty decent. They have really good peeling. They have a talent called Safeguard, which makes it so that they have 2 charges of Intervene, and when you intervene a target, that target takes 20% less damage for 6 seconds. So, and that's all damage. I know some people thought that's just melee damage. It's 20% overall damage reduction. They block all melee attacks, but for 6 seconds, 20% of damage in general gets absorbed, which is pretty nice. So I think Arms Warrior is in a decent spot. I'm gonna say Arms Warrior is A tier, but again, I'm going to swap some things around as this tier list goes on. Fury Warrior, I think, is probably not as good. I don't think it's terrible. I've played against a couple of Fury Warriors in like some duels and some arenas, but I don't see them a lot. I'm not going to lie. But I think their burst is okay. Their survivability is just really rough. So I think I'm going to place them probably in C tier, honestly, if I'm going to be real with myself. Do I think I'm going to see one in AWC? No. And do I think I'm going to see one at like the highest rating like range? Probably not. And then as an average player, Fury is super easy to play, but I think it living as a Fury Warrior can be a little difficult, especially if somebody knows how to deal with you. So yeah, I'm going to place it in C tier. I think Arms Warrior is just significantly better than it currently, at least in my opinion. Also, there's things in the game that really affect a lot of your damage as a Fury Warrior. I know they just got a Slaughterhouse buff, which made it so that Slaughterhouse can be easier to be applied, you know, so maybe I'll put them in B tier, but they're definitely like low B tier in my opinion. So Assassination Rogue, I actually just started playing Assassination Rogue. I find it really fun, just like super casually, but I think Assassination Rogue, I think rogues in general, it's a hard spec for a lot of players to play, like a hard class. There's a lot of technicality revolving around it, a lot of globals you have to use. Sometimes people get stuck just doing one thing over and over again. Like, I know Assassination Rogues struggle with just spamming Mutilate when they can be Envenoming or using Rupture on a secondary target, stuff like that. So realistically, I think we can probably place Assassination Rogue in like higher B tier. And then Subtly Rogue, super high damage, super high sustainability and control, and also a ridiculously tanky spec in my opinion. They basically have a bubble on a 2-minute cooldown with the PvP talent, and that PvP talent, or that cooldown, Cloak of Shadows, can also be reduced in duration. The CDR for it comes off of Vanish, which is really good. So I'm going to say we're going to place sub in S tier. I think it's super good. Outlaw is actually a pretty decent spec. I would say it's probably like the equivalent of an Arms Warrior if Arms Warrior had maybe a little bit more control. A little bit more control, I think, and also has really great peels for their team. They also have the ability to get Smoke Bomb, which is really nice. So I'm gonna place Outlaw in high A. It may be S tier. This may be S tier with a specific comp. So, for instance, I think Outlaw Boomkin is really good. I think Outlaw Boomkin's phenomenal. I also think Outlaw Shadow Priest is really good, though I think Sub Rogue may play better with a Shadow Priest. Shout out to the move. I think the move is going to do phenomenal in the AWC, by the way, with the buffs coming on Tuesday. I think everything revolving around those buffs on Tuesday basically caters around Pikaboo and WizK, and then Absurge can pretty much fluctuate what healer he's on, but I think Resto Druid's going to be the best healer still, but we'll go over that in a second. Either way, yeah, Marksmanship Hunter, it's actually not too bad. So my theory is, like, because the plate specializations have their armor reduced by 30%, their Marksmanship Hunter is going to do better into plate than it did previously, because plate wearers used to like kind of screw over Marksmanship Hunters, but now Clothies are going to do better into Marksmanship Hunter, which is weird because Marksmanship Hunters only did really well into Clothies before, and now they're going to kind of have like a middle ground where they're not really great into anything, but they're not really bad into anything, but they're not phenomenal. So I'm going to actually place Marksmanship in B tier, even under Assassination Rogue. I don't think they're that great, because all they do is physical damage. They do have Arcane Shot, which hits for arcane damage, obviously, and it does pretty decent damage, so it ignores armor altogether, but I just don't think they're that great, unless if you're Jelly Beans, and like maybe a couple of other really great, like maybe Chadsmanship. But yeah, I don't know. Marksman is a very tough class to play. Super trainable, super squishy, can die really easily as well. Also, some Marksmanship Hunters don't play with a pet because they play Lone Wolf, so they lack Roar of Sacrifice, which is a crucial defensive for Hunters, in my opinion. So yeah, I would place them in B tier. They could probably be lower too, but I think they're above Fury Warrior, so I'm going to keep them in B tier for right now. Survival Hunter is actually getting a buff. They're getting a 4% buff to themselves and their pet damage, which is actually pretty good considering like they have stuff like Flanking Strike, which is damage from you and your pet, stuff like that. So I think Survival is actually going to be okay. I low-key think it may even be A tier if played at a great level, but I'm going to place it in B tier for the average player. It's a very high technical class. requires a lot of like APM, for instance, like actions per minute. Like you need to be thinking about a lot of things you can do. You can knock people into traps, you can pull them behind line of sight and hit them with a steel trap to lock them behind the pillar and they can't get dispelled, stuff like that. So Survival Hunter has, I mean, obviously the other Hunter specs have this capability as well, but Survival being a melee has a harder skill cap, in my opinion, than the other two specializations of Hunters. And now we have Beast Mastery Hunter. Beast Mastery, in my opinion, is the easiest Hunter spec to play. And this is, I played Hunter to a pretty decent level. I played Hunter to 2K in first season. So I think first season of Dragonflight, sorry. I think Beast Mastery is probably the easiest. I think it does a good amount of damage. It can get trained and still do decent damage. I'm going to place it in A tier for now. I think we're going to see a lot more cloth wearers because of the changes. And even with that being the case, I think Beast Mastery Hunter will do better into cloth wearers than people think, because Beast Mastery Hunters are actually pretty hard to kill. One, they have Roar Sacrifice. Two, you have the Feign Death that now makes you take 90% less damage for 3 seconds every 30 seconds. So if you have good Feign Deaths, it's actually very hard to kill you in general as a Beast Mastery Hunter. And then you have Turtle, obviously, and Survival of the Fittest and your Exhilaration Heal. So there is things Hunters have to stay alive through a lot of burst rotations, which is going to help them significantly against control classes, which casters happen to be a lot of control. So yeah, I'm going to say Beast Mastery is A, low A tier, but pretty decent. And for an average player, it's probably one of the easier specializations to play and pick up. You just have to manage some barb shot stacks, and outside of that, you're just spamming kill command pretty much. So damage rotation wise, super easy. Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, so Havoc Demon Hunter does a tremendous amount of damage. It could probably be S tier. Like, it could probably sit in S tier because I think we'll see it in the AWC even. It's really good with Boomkins. It's pretty good with, like, Death Knight as well. Maybe even Warlock, like Destro Warlock. Havoc Demon Hunter is pretty gross. I'm actually surprised I haven't seen any Havoc Demon Hunter Enhancement Shaman. I feel like that comp is super low-key good. Also, Havoc Demon Hunter Windwalker is really good too. So there's a lot of compositions you can play as a Havoc Demon Hunter. The problem is it's actually kind of hard to stay alive as a Havoc Demon Hunter in the meta, because a lot of things lock down your healer, and you have kind of like short cooldown windows, but the cooldowns last a very short period of time. So like Netherwalk's a 3-minute cooldown, but you know, only lasts 6 seconds. So you have to know when to use your cooldowns as a Havoc Demon Hunter, and if you struggle with that, you're gonna die kind of easily. So I'm actually gonna place it for like the average player, a little under Arms Warrior. I think for the average player, it is easier to play an Arms Warrior than a Havoc Demon Hunter. Now, I know the Havoc Demon Hunter's damage rotation is kind of simple, but I think Arms Warrior is a little simpler for the average player again. Now, at a high level, I think Havoc Demon Hunter is probably around S tier range. But again, we're keeping averages in mind. Now, I did put Sub-Rogue in S tier. Sub-Rogue is significantly hard to play, I will say that. So you will have to practice a lot as an average player. So yeah, so keep that in mind. A lot of this revolves around the fact that you're relatively decent at the game, but not great. And a lot of this also revolves around the fact that you've played the class for a decent period of time. It's not like you're just going to step into it and crush arenas. Feral Druids. Now, poor Feral Druids, man. I'm going to place them in C tier. They are significantly, like, squishy. I don't know why they're so squishy. Now, I play with a Feral Druid as on my Devastation Evoker. I play Feral Druid, Devastation Evoker, Holy Paladin, and I actually really like that comp because we just do a ridiculous amount of damage, but we're like the definition of a glass cannon comp. We can die in a single setup super easily. My Feral Druid struggles to live sometimes. I struggle to live sometimes. So, yeah, Feral Druid's super squishy. They are getting Frenzy Regen buff come Tuesday. It's going to be buffed by 20%, which they needed, honestly. I think Frenzy Regen used to heal them for like maybe 200k over the whole duration, and so now it'll heal for like maybe 300k over the whole duration, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, so Frenzy Regen is going to be better for Feral Druids, but I still think, sadly, Feral Druid's going to be a little rough around the edges. Just because of how squishy they are compared to the amount of damage they can put out. I think every other class that's above it can live for a lot longer on their own and also put out like decent damage. I do say Feral does a lot of damage and is a very mobile class, so it's super fun to play. But I do think it's super squishy and can die really easily. So if you want to play Feral Druid, go for it, but just expect to be a melee glass cannon. Resto Druid, I think this is the best healer in the game still. It is getting nerfed on yeah, it's getting nerfed on Tuesday. It's getting 5% less mana regeneration and also 5% less healing. But I think it's still insane. The fact that you have 3 or however many treants healing passively, you have NPCs that heal for you, which is really nice because you can sit CC while your treants heal. Also, you revolve around HOTS being on a target. So if you just pre-HOT a target, like you pre-overgrowth a target before you get sat in CC, you can sit in the CC all day long. And also, again, the game is moving into a more dampener meta. And our druids seem to thrive in the more dampener setting, in my opinion, purely because of the fact that a lot of Resto Druids are playing Night Elves, and you can just Shadow Meld drink and sit and prowl and drink yourself to a very healthy amount of mana when it matters most. So I think Resto Druids are pretty good for that. And again, like everybody's getting higher health pool. I think Resto Druid will be pretty good. It also has really good burst healing. So yeah, I think Resto Druid's definitely S tier. It's probably the best healer in the game in my opinion. But well, again, we'll see. Balanced Druid. Balanced Druid is getting a slight nerf. Moonkin form is reducing its armor by 25% in PvP. But it's not that great. It's really not that great. It's not that bad of a nerf. I expected to see a little bit of a damage nerf from Boomkin. They do a lot of damage for the fact that they have the best crowd control in the game. And I think Boomkins for some reason are just like they're just so good. They not only do you have Root Beam as like an ability, you also have Mighty Bash, and you have Cyclone, which is disgusting, and you do some of the highest spell damage in the entire game, which doesn't apply to any of the armor changes. And you're also like good in the early game and good in the late game. So I think Boomkin is definitely an S tier class still. Super, super good. Yeah, very strong class. Moving on to Frost Death Knight. Frost Death Knight, I think it's weird. Frost Death Knight is actually really good as TSG right now, which is Warrior, Death Knight, Healer. And also, it's really good with Devastation Evoker. Outside of that, it's not that great, though. I would say Frost Death Knight kind of struggles. You might be able to get away with something like Frost Death Knight Demonology Warlock. And at the low level, Frost Death Knight is probably pretty decent as long as you can get your setups right. So I'm actually going to place Frost Death Knight above Fury Warrior in B tier. Now, I know a lot of people like insta-place Frost Death Knight in the lowest tier possible, which I used to do. And even being a Frost Death Knight player, I played Frost Death Knight to 2.4 in Season 1 of Dragonflight. I think Frost Death Knight is still not that great, but it plays really nicely into people that don't know how to appreciate the amount of damage it's doing. You know, they don't trade properly into it, or they accidentally trinket and then they end up fully silenced at 30% health, and then you just die in 3 globals because, you know, you obliterate, Frost Strike, obliterate, boom, there goes 400k of your health, you know. So I think Frost Death Knight has a lot of potential, but it gets nullified at higher ratings because people know how to deal with its damage better. So if you're in that 1500 to 1800 range, Frost Death Knights will probably be pretty strong, especially because they do all frost damage. So they, which is weird, their obliterates do purely frost damage when they are buffed by their Killing Machine proc. So realistically, the armor buffs and changes don't actually apply to Frost Death Knight either. So yeah, I think Frost Death Knight's actually going to do better than other melee, specifically probably even better than Marksmanship Hunter, depending on the team composition you're playing against. So yeah, I would say Frost Death Knight's actually not too bad for the average player. And even at a high level, it can be very hard to play into a Frost Death Knight that knows what they're doing. Shout out to Zeke, the Frost God, and also shout out to Toxicant. I mean, both absolute legends on the Frost Death Knight specialization. So yeah, yeah, Zeke's actually the highest rated Death Knight in solo shuffle currently in the world as Frost Death Knight, which is crazy. So yeah, check that out. I think Frost is insane in the right hands, and it's decent at a average player level because people don't appreciate the amount of damage it's about to do because not enough people play Frost Death Knight. I do think, however, Unholy Death Knight is probably better. I think Frost, like Unholy Death Knight does a lot of consistent damage. It's pretty hard to control an Unholy DK because they have a lot of abilities to break out of crowd control. They also have a lot of abilities to stop crowd control. I do think a lot of people forget that Death Knights in general can take Dark Simulacrum, and Dark Sim is actually super, super good into Balanced Druids. It's good into Mages. You can steal things like Polymorph. You can steal things like Cyclone. So yeah, I think for some reason people just forget how good you could steal Ice Block, you could steal Paladin Bubble. So there's things that you can steal with Dark Simulacrum. This goes for Frost Death Knight too. That is really good, but people just don't play Dark Simulacrum a lot. So yeah, yeah, I would say Unholy Death Knight's pretty good. It does a lot of damage, and it has a relatively easy rotation for an average player. Anywhere, like I said, in that 1400, 1500 bracket. Any of you guys that are playing Unholy Death Knight can kind of roll your face on the keyboard a little bit and pump at least a decent amount of damage. Now, if you have your rotation down perfectly, you're going to do a significant amount of damage, which is really nice. But it's an easier class to play. And yeah, I think Unholy Death Knight's pretty solid right now. It also has a lot of control, which is really nice. Instantaneous control, too. Devastation Evoker. This is my baby. I love Devastation Evoker. Yeah, Devastation Evoker is my favorite class to play right now by far. I think it is super, super underrated, especially if you're good at pressing your defensives properly. So I'm actually going to place, it's going to sound crazy, but I'm going to place Devastation Evoker in A tier, high A tier. I think it is one of the highest damaging classes in the game, if not the highest damaging class in the game. Not only does it have a ranged, like it's ranged in general, it also has the ability to avoid crowd control with Deep Breath. It has the ability to pull itself across the map with Rescue and give itself a 30% absorption shield, which is disgusting. It has Renewing Blaze, which is kind of like a worse Alter Time. It has 2 shield walls. It just has so much utility. It has Time Stop too, which is crazy. People aren't even using Time Stop to its fullest potential yet. Like, if you think about it, Time Stop can be used to avoid crowd control. You can send it on your healer if he doesn't have a trinket, and they're about to land like a full clone on him. Boom, send a Time Stop on him, avoid the full clone, break him out of the Time Stop. Now he can stop the clone himself. Like, you can do so much with Devastation Evoker, and people aren't even at that level yet. And I'm not even at that level yet, and I'm getting there, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to see more Devastation Evoker content, please make sure to subscribe and also check out my other content on the YouTube channel. But either way, getting on to the next specialization, Augmentation Evoker, and man, have we fallen from the top. Augmentation Evoker used to be an absolute god, S tier class, super insane, and now it's not what it used to be. It isn't bad. You know, I know a lot of people are placing this in like the lowest ranks, like D tier, like tank rank. I've actually played Augmentation Evoker recently, and it's not terrible. It has a really clunky rotation because of Prescience, and I think Prescience should honestly, if they want to make Augmentation Evoker decent again, just remove Prescience from the global cooldown. If you have Prescience off global cooldown, I swear it could be a really good specialization. Not bad at all. With that being said, its damage is way lower than Devastation Evoker. It does have a little bit more utility with Blistering Scales, and also it has the ability to get Dream Projection, which is crazy good. Allows you to dispel a teammate. I think Augmentation Evoker, Havoc Demon Hunter has potential to be one of the better better comps for it. Now I will say the average player, it is going to be significantly harder for you to play Augmentation than Devastation Evoker. So if you're an average player, if you're a 1600 player and you're trying to play Augmentation Evoker, I highly suggest you try to play Devastation Evoker. It's significantly easier. But at the highest rating, I know there's a really good Augmentation Evoker player that I talk to a lot. I have him on my friends list. His name is Frequently. He's a beast, and he plays with his brother, who plays Demon Hunter, and they are insane together. He is a really good Augmentation Evoker player, and even he struggles with it a little bit. But yeah, I would say Augmentation Evoker is not bad. I'm going to actually place it low B tier. It could even be maybe high C tier, but I don't think it's that bad. Its damage goes aren't terrible. You have Upheaval still, which hits for like 120 or 130k, and then you can instant cast a Fire Breath, which removes all hots if you're playing against Resto Druid and you want to play Scurrying Flame. So you have those still, which is really good, and you also have Eruption spam, and if Eruptions can hit for like 160 to 180k, and when you're bursting, after a Breath of Eons, you gain Bloodlust, so you can actually do an eruption like every 0.5 seconds. It's disgusting how fast you can cast out eruptions. With that being said, though, Disintegrate just does the same amount of damage on a way easier way to line up the damage. It's significantly easier to line up damage as a Devastation Evoker, but you can make it happen as an Augmentation Evoker. Don't tell anybody else. Don't tell people that you can't. Augmentation Evoker is a thing. It's just now nobody's playing it now that Devastation's significantly easier to play. But yeah, I will place it in low B tier. Low B tier. Preservation Evoker just got off like a little buff. I think it was like a 5% buff. It was going to be like a 10% buff or something like that, but then they like nerfed it literally the night they came out with the patch for some reason, which is really weird. So yeah, Preservation Evoker is coming off of a small buff. I would say Preservation Evoker is probably A tier. I'm going to place it a little above Beast Mastery. I think it's decent. I don't think it's phenomenal. I think it's decent, though. It does have Emerald Communion, which is pretty good because you can use it in crowd control and it AoE heals, and it does a lot of healing. The problem with Emerald Communion is if you get Cycloned as the Preservation Evoker while you're casting Emerald Communion, I think it stops the healing from like for some reason it stops the healing of Communion if you're Cycloned, which is terrible. It's the only thing that stops it, I think, right now. So yeah, Preservation Evokers struggle into Druids a little bit. They're a little bit of a soft counter to Resto Druids because they can purge off all the hots instantly, which is really nice with the Tip the Scales Fire Breath with Scurrying Flame. And they also do a lot of damage. If you ever want to watch a really high-rated Preservation Evoker, I would highly suggest you check out either Meh on EU, which is really good, or Sea-Doo on NA. Sea-Doo plays Preservation Evoker at probably the peak in NA. And also there's Nelthy. Nelthy's really good also as Preservation Evoker. So if you want to check out some Preservation Evoker gameplay, go check those guys out. They're absolutely insane. Moving on to Paladin. Holy Paladin. I think Holy Paladin's actually not bad. I don't think it's as good as Preservation Evoker. Maybe I'll put Preservation Evoker up here just so I can put Holy Paladin here. I don't think Holy Paladin's that bad. It does a lot of healing. It has a lot of cooldowns. The problem is it's nowhere near Resto Druid. When it comes to healing, if you're comparing anything to Resto Druid's just significantly easier and significantly better than pretty much every other hero in the game. I will say though, if you get trained as a Restoration Druid, it's super easy to die if you're not good at the class. So like the average player range, Restoration Druid might be a lot harder to play than something like a Preservation Evoker or Holy Paladin, but Restoration Druid is significantly better in my opinion. So yeah, Holy Paladins do have a lot of cooldowns to rotate through, so for a lower rated player, you might be able to get away with playing a Holy Paladin at a higher rating than Preservation. But it's hard to say. Rep Paladins, stupidly significant buff for Rep Paladins coming this next patch on Tuesday. They're getting a 20% damage buff to Wake of Ashes, 28% damage buff to Truth's Wake damage, 28% damage buff to Seething Flames, 20% buff to Blade of Justice, and a 10% buff to Final Verdict. So their damage is going to skyrocket this next patch. Now, with that being said, I didn't think Rets were bad before. I honestly don't know why they're buffing them. I don't think they're that bad. Ret Warrior is still really good. And Cupid Cleave is also really good, which is Ret Hunter. So I don't know why they're buffing them this much. And also, Rets do, like, I would say 90% of their damage is not only ranged, but it's also holy strike damage or holy damage. So it does damage through armor. So I think Rets are actually going to be really good. I'm going to place them up in A tier. They also have some of the best utility in the game with Blessing of Sacrifice, Blessing of Sanctuary, which is really good. Let's see, what else do they have? They have Hand of Freedom. Yeah, they have a bunch of stuff. They have Land Hands, Bop, they have Bubble. They have a bunch of stuff. So they're not bad at all. They definitely can give your team the opportunity to do multiple goes, which is really important. A lot of times some teams focus so much on the damage heavy of the game that they fall behind on the aspect that they're going to, like, you know, have to live. So if you can live enough goes, you'll end up winning. But if you only live one go, you know, the next go, you're just going to die if the team outlives you. So Rep Paladins kind of allow you to live for a long period of time. I would say Rep Paladins are pretty solid, not bad at all. The only problem is a Rep Paladin is if a team trains you, which 90% of the times people do go Rep Paladins, it becomes a little harder for you to do your damage, and also it becomes a lot harder for you to save your teammates, because a lot of the times you'll be sat in crowd control. So you have to preemptively do things, which is really hard to do sometimes. So rep Paladins, though, at the average player level, if you can get your damage burst rotation down, you'll absolutely slap the competition. I think they're really good. So yeah, rep Paladins are really solid. Definitely not a class to bat an eye at. I think they're pretty crazy. Moving on to Priest, we have Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest is pretty good. They have no changes coming Tuesday outside of the armor buffs, which is also really good for them. So I'm actually going to place Disc Priest a little under Preservation, but above Holy Paladin. Now, Disc Priest is really good. It has 2 charges of Pain Sup, has Void Swap. It also has Rapture, which is really good, and Power Word Barrier. And also, we can't forget about Ultimate Penitence. I know a lot of people call it Ultimate Penance. It is Ultimate Penitence, and I can prove that right now if I type in Ultimate. Let's see here. I'm going to type this in. Penitence. It is called Ultimate Penitence. Penitence, guys. Please stop calling it Ultimate Penance. I hate that. I don't know why. It's like a pet peeve of mine. It is Ultimate Penitence. But either way, moving on. Small rant. Sorry. Yeah, I think this Priest is not bad at all. It's really good. It does high damage, well, decent damage, and it also can live a couple of goes, which is really nice. It plays really, really well with Rogue Mage and Rogue Boomkin. And it also plays really great with Devastation Evoker, Death Knight. It plays great with Devastation Evoker in general. So I think Discipline Priest is a phenomenal class. As a Devastation Evoker player, I can't complain. Moving on to Holy Priest, I think it is the worst healer in the game by far. I don't know why, man. I don't like Holy Priest. I don't like Holy Priest at all. I think it is a little mean of me to put it under Augmentation Evoker, but no, it is bad. It's really bad. Yeah, I don't like Holy Priest. So the problem with Holy Priest is they have no damage reduction effects for their teammates. So you're relying purely on burst healing. And with the meta shifting a little further into dampening, it's actually getting worse for Holy Priest, because you're going to have to deal with more and more dampening as the game's going to last a little longer. And seeing you have nothing that avoids damage / prevents damage from happening / reduces damage your team's taking, you're going to struggle a lot as a Holy Priest. And their main cooldown, Guardian Spirit, it's a long cooldown. It also, the only redeeming factor for Holy Priest, in my opinion, is the fact they can go in angel form and get free dispels off, which is really nice. And also, it conserves a little bit of mana. But outside of that, Resto Druid still out mana you, still out heal you. They have Iron Bark, which is a damage reduction effect. And they have basically the same exact immune as you with Tranquility, except Tranquility is a little bit better, in my opinion, than even the Spirit form, because it just is. I don't know. I just feel like Resto Druids are just so much better than Holy Priest. So yeah, I'm going to place Holy Priest in C tier. I just think it's bad. Its Mastery is good. So if you play like a full stacked Mastery Holy Priest, you can heal somebody and then you can get caught in crowd control. Like say you Holy Word Serenity them and they get healed for 500k, which can happen. No problem. That's like a 60% health heal or 50% health heal even. You know, it's not bad. And your Mastery is going to do, you know, maybe 60k ticks, 70k ticks, which is a great heal over time. But the problem is as dampening stacks up and stacks up and stacks up, if you don't win the game fast as a Holy Priest, you are going to lose for sure, because you'll end up doing less and less healing and not being able to heal through significant amounts of burst damage, which you need to be able to do as a Holy Priest. So they have to kind of check that out and see what they're going to do with that. But that is always the problem with Holy Priests, is they don't have any damage reduction cooldowns whatsoever. They purely rely on big heals, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not a great thing. Shadow Priest, significant buffs. Coming to Shadow Priest, not really. A little bit of buffs. So Mind Blast, 10% damage increase. Instead of hitting for 25k now, we're going to be seeing some 28ks come out. Ooh, baby. 28k damage Mind Blast? Guys, get ready for some big damage from Shadow Priest, ladies and gentlemen. No, but on a serious note, they are getting buffed. Devouring Plague, 10% damage increase. Shadowy Apparition damage increase by 20%. I don't think that's important that much, honestly. But the main one is this 10% damage buff on the Devouring Plague. That's also very nice. And also the big buff for Shadow Priest is the fact that they're gaining armor from being a cloth specialization, like I said earlier. So WizK is going to be absolutely stomping on people. Stop. Might come back. Come on, stop. You got to play the game, baby. Stop. We got to see the Shadow Priest in action. You're the most consistent content creator when you're making content. What are you doing? Get out here on the Shadow Priest and represent. So I think I think Shadow Priest is I think Shadow Priest with the buffs might actually be like there on the A tier. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're amazing, but I do think they're good. I don't think they're bad. They're pretty solid. And if you're playing like Destrolock Shadow play, which is Destrolock, Shadow Priest, and Healer, which would most likely be Resto Druid or Restoration Shaman, maybe even Mistweaver, I don't know, but I don't think a Mistweaver is going to play that comp that much. You'll definitely have no problem, especially come Tuesday once those armor buffs come in. You're going to be way tankier, do the same amount of damage, if not more, and be even more annoying to fight. I cannot stand fighting against Shadow play. If you're playing Shadow play, please just leave me alone. Just leave me alone as a Devastation Evoker. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to do my burst goes. I'm not trying to have to play Divide and Conquer and annoy you. Like, I don't even want to see you guys. You guys don't want to see me. I don't want to see you. Please, just stop queuing when I'm queuing. All right, either way, moving on to Windwalker Monk. This class actually pumps. I think Windwalker Monk is super fun to play. Might be one of the highest, if not the highest, melee damage in the entire game. So, yeah, I'm going to place Windwalker Monk. The fact that it does significantly high damage, I'm going to place it a little... I need to swap this around. This is driving me insane. This is driving me crazy, ladies and gentlemen. Think like that. Yeah. I think Arms Warrior, Havoc Demon Hunter, and Windwalker are actually pretty tied. I actually think Unholy DK is probably worse than all of them, though. Jesus, man, this is getting me confused. Either way, Windwalker Monk is not bad at all. It is a very good spec. Highest burst damage in the class for melee for sure in like the tightest windows. The problem is from an average player perspective, you can die in like a wind blow. You blink an eye and you can get slapped on Windwalker Monk. So if you can't predict when damage is going to happen to you, I highly suggest playing something else. If you can start to predict when damage is happening to you, or like, oh, they're pressing wings, maybe I should consider pressing Dampen Harm. You'll be fine. Just press your buttons, ladies and gentlemen. Don't sit there and eat an entire wings go and then at 20% health press Dampen Harm. It is not going to save you then. You have to press it at 70% health, 80% health even. Be proactive, ladies and gentlemen. Proactive. Get that in your mind. If you are playing a class that has defensives that has to be used prior to damage coming out, like Havoc Demon Hunter, Devastation Evoker, or Windwalker Monk, you have to press your defensive buttons before the damage happens, ladies and gentlemen. I can't preach this enough. But either way, Windwalker Monk is really good. I think you do a significant amount of damage, practice your damage rotation on a dummy, go into an arena, smack people around like it's your job, force a defensive on one target, go in Tiger's Palm another, and get a 20% haste buff. Also, make yourself do 50% increased chance to crit and just slaughter somebody else at the same time. They're crazy good. But yeah, you have to learn how to play them for sure. Mistweaver Monk, yeah, Mistweaver Monk. They're not bad. They're not great. I think they are probably one of the best healers into Devastation Evoker Unholy Death Knight, because pretty much every single time an Unholy Death Knight or a Frost Death Knight and a Devastation Evoker have a go, you have a cooldown to respond with, whether it's Life Cocoon or a Restore or Revival. So that is kind of nice having that counter there. Now, I will say Mistweaver struggles versus Sub-Rogues, I think, in my opinion, outside of the fact that when a target of yours gets shadowy dueled, you can still restore as a Mistweaver Monk and save them while they're in the shadowy duel. So that is kind of nice. That's not bad at all. So there's that. So I think Mistweaver Monk belongs in high B tier. I won't say it's A tier. I do think it's really good. It has some of the highest consistent damage in the game, but it is also really hard to live as a Mistweaver Monk if you are not good. So if you're like... okay, I should not say not good. If you are like average level, so if you're like 1500 to 1900, I would highly suggest learning to kite and survive as a Mistweaver Monk. It is like your most important tool. If you struggle with that, you're going to struggle versus like a lot of higher tier comps. And also it struggles versus a lot of control. You have to get really good at avoiding crowd control as a Mistweaver Monk, which sometimes is just impossible. I will say having a disarm as a healer is really cool and really good. So like for Sub-Rogues, if you can pre-disarm their Shadow Dance, very solid, very solid. They also have a physical crowd control with paralyze, which is really nice because you can paralyze a DPS target and incapacitate them for 4 seconds. They can't be dispelled out of it. That's also very nice. And they have a kick. So there is a lot of things you can do as a Mistweaver Monk, but you have to learn how to play Mistweaver Monk. So I think for the average player, Mistweaver Monk's going to be a little harder than some of these other like PvE style healing specs. Yeah, so Mistweaver I think is high B tier. Let's get into Destrolock. This class is going to be a monster. It is already super tanky in my opinion. One of the tankier classes because of Dark Pact. I will say it is hard to live as if you are not good at kiting with your Demonic Circle and not using Gateway. You have to learn how to use Gateway. Gateway is really crucial for you. Don't forget, by the way, when you're playing Warlock, this is something when I was playing my Warlock that I used to forget a lot, but you can always like use your Gateway, and then like you can replace your Gateway to help your team use it better. Sometimes people are like, oh, use my Gateway, but their teammates aren't near there. You can actually just recast their Gateway, like use a Soul Shard and just recast your Gateway instantly. A lot of people struggle with replacing Gateway. Sometimes they place it right in the beginning of the match, and that's where it stays the entire match, even if you're playing nowhere near it. So don't be afraid to replace your Gateway. Also, if you run out of mobility cooldowns, don't be afraid if you have Gateway off cooldown. Like you don't have the debuff, don't be afraid to instant cast a Gateway from where you are to like a pillar and just use it as if you're using mobility. So yeah, that's something, it's a word of advice for all the lock specs. But either way, Destrolock, super high damage, has some of the best instant cast damage in the game in my opinion, via Conflag and Shadow Burn. Immolate is really nice. It's kind of like a bait kick button, but you kind of have to just spam cast Immolate. It does a lot. It helps a lot for you. So like your Chaos Bolts rip Immolate damage off of people. So you kind of like just spam Immolates around. You can Conflagrate. You toss that double Havoc Mortal Coil into some beastie Chaos Bolts. Love to see it. Love to see it, ladies and gentlemen. Check out Buelock. And also check out... who else plays Destrolock? I don't know. Buelock. Check out Buelock. But yeah, he's really good. But yeah, Destrolock, I'm going to place it in low A tier. Just because it does a lot of damage. And I think it can overwhelm a lower rated healer really fast. Especially because you have Havoc. Havoc is really strong. Havoc is really strong for you. Because you can do a lot of damage to 2 targets at once. Which is really nice. And also it has the curses, which is really good. Affliction, sadly... man... I wish Affliction was better. Now, like I said, we are moving towards a little bit more of a dampener meta with the stamina changes and the armor changes, so I think Affliction will be a lot better than it is right now, but I don't think it's great. I think it's actually pretty much the same level as Augmentation in terms of, like, gameplay. It's pretty dampener, and it doesn't really feel great to play. Now, I play Affliction Lock when I play Warlock, and I actually enjoy it, but it does take a long time to kill people if they are used to healing you, and for a new player or somebody that's average, it might be really hard to keep your Warlock dots up on multiple targets. A lot of times people hyperfixate on one target, and that's the only target that gets your Warlock dots, and if you're only dotting one target as an Affliction Warlock, you are going to fall behind significantly in damage and in pressure. You need to spread dots for sure as an Affliction Warlock. So if you're good at spreading dots or hitting multiple targets, I definitely suggest trying out Affliction Lock, but I don't think it is your best option for a class right now. I think Affliction needs a little bit of tuning, but in a weird way. I don't think it needs damage. It does decent damage. The problem with it is it's like, it just doesn't feel great. Like Havoc has double Mortal Coil. Demonology has Axe Toss and Fear. Maybe I just need to play Howl of Terror on my Warlock. I don't know, man. I don't know. They need to do something with it, though. Maybe they just need to give Shadow Fury baseline to Affliction or something instead of making it a talent. I don't know. I have no clue. All I know is that Affliction just doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel bad. It doesn't feel great. So B tier it is for Affliction. Demonology, super good. I don't think it's great. Again, I think Destro is better. I'm going to place it high B tier. I think Destro is better than Demonology. Now, Demonology, again, all the Warlock specs are getting a significant armor increase come on Tuesday, which is going to be really great for them. The problem is Demonology still, you have to deal with your pets doing stuff for you, and if people are good at dealing with your pets, like via rooting them, or just kicking the Tyrant, or stuff like that, or killing the Tyrant even, you're going to struggle a lot as a Demonology Warlock to do a lot of damage. Now, I will say the set bonus this season is really nice. Being able to cast out like a Doom Bolt and the dot do something, and then you get another pet sometimes, and it does a lot of damage. That's great, but I think destruction is just way more solid, way more fine-tuned, and way less random than a Demonology Warlock. There's still a lot of bugs, too, for Demonology Warlocks. I notice when they cast, like, Tyrant on a pillar sometimes, the Tyrant just stands there and looks like an idiot. He, like, doesn't do things. So I think that's another problem Demonology struggles with, is it relies so heavily on a pack of pets and AI that sometimes that AI doesn't work quite right, and then you just struggle because your class isn't working the way it's supposed to due to a bug. So yeah, I think that's the problem with Demonology. I will say Axe Toss is really nice because it prevents rogues opener a lot. So like if you're unless if they cheap shot your pet, which actually does happen at like a high rating. Sometimes people will gouge or cheap shot a pet into like a Ring of Frost, and that completely avoids your pet from stopping their go. But if they don't do that, you can pretty much stop a sub-rogue's opener entirely from your pet alone, which is really nice. So I will say they are good into rogues. I think Ret Paladins are also good into rogues. So maybe with the rise of Ret coming this patch, maybe Ret Demonology Warlock, you might see that again. Shout out to first season of Dragonflight, and also shout out to Shadowlands, which I didn't play a lot of, but I heard it was really good in that patch, or that expansion. But either way, moving on to Mage, we got Frost Mage. Frost Mage does a lot of damage. Frost Bomb is crazy good, and I think its damage isn't that hard to get off. You just like Frost Bomb into a flurry and like just do damage off of that. Like it doesn't seem that hard to play Frost Mage in my opinion. The problem is you're casting a lot as a mage, which sucks, and two, Frost Bomb can be dispelled, which sucks because a big chunk of your damage. I will say Frost with a like rogue is pretty nice. It's pretty nice. I will say it's pretty good. I do think low-key Devastation Evoker with a Frost Mage is also pretty nice. And low-key, super low-key, keep this on the download, ladies and gentlemen. Shadow Priest Frost Mage. Bring back the God comp, ladies and gentlemen. Resto Druid, Shadow Priest, Frost Mage. Shout out to Mr. Pandaria, Prideful Season. Bring it back. I'm telling you, it's not bad. I don't know why people don't play it. Maybe they're just not skillful enough. I'm just kidding. But it's not bad. You know, it's not terrible at all. You have Mighty Bash for the healer. You can get a Mighty Bash into a Cologne. You can get a Mighty Bash into a Poly. You have the Silence for the healer. You have the Stun for their main target with the Horrify from the Shadow Priest. Like, come on, ladies and gentlemen. Get with the times. Get with the times, ladies and gentlemen. I think Frost Mage Shadow Priest needs to see a return. I'm going to place Frost Mage in A tier. I don't think it's no. I'm going to place it low. Like under Destro. I think Destro deserves to be a little higher though. Maybe like that. I don't know. Beastmaster is going to be really good. But yeah, I think low A tier Frost Mage belongs. Arcane, however, I think it might be one of the best damaging specs in the game. High A tier for sure. Has a significant amount of damage. Now, I will say for a newer player, getting used to casting on one school does suck because you have to deal with getting kicked. When you get kicked, you get basically locked out of everything except for Ring of Frost and Ring of Fire as an Arcane Mage. Whereas Frost, if you get kicked, you can at least polymorph, which is really nice. And polymorph spam alone will keep you alive through your lockout. Arcane Mage does not have that luxury. You cannot polymorph. You can, however, Frost Nova. You can Kona Cold. You can do a bunch of things. So I don't know why people complain about it too much, but I swear Arcane is not bad at all. It's really good actually versus casters, like other casters as well, because mage armor or the shield that they get, I forget what it's called. It used to be called mage armor. What is it called now, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know. Either way, arcane barrier, something like that, mage barrier, I don't know. But either way, their shield reduces the duration of magical effects on you. So if you play mass barrier as an arcane mage, your healer gets the shield as well, and if they get polymorphed or they get crowd controlled by magic in some way, that duration is significantly reduced due to the absorption on them. So they have to get purged first before they can get sat in crowd control, and it's just a whole big ordeal, ladies and gentlemen. It's ridiculous. So I think Arcade Mage is disgusting. Also has some of the nicest, tightest burst windows too, if you can get it down right. I mean, check out Palamore's burst video, dude. Jamili absolutely cranked. He did like a 1.2 second 100 to 0. Which is pretty nasty on the Arcane Mage. Wasn't the best, though. I won't spoil who was the best. I will say it was really creative the way they did that. But if you want to check out Palamore's burst video, go check it out. I might even link it in the description below, so check that out. But it's really cool. It just shows all the classes, all the specializations doing the best burst 100 to O's the second the damage hits. So either way, check that out. Arcane Mage is not bad at all. Fire Mage, however, I think is pretty bad. They haven't buffed it for some reason, but I swear it does not do that much damage. And I don't know what's happening, but it like, Fire Mage for some reason, it just gets like, not only do you have to play Glass Cannon like 90% of the time, which reduces your health, so it makes you squishier, but you only hit like 100k Pyroblast. And that's not even a disintegration tick for my Devastation Evoker. Like, legitimately. So, you know, you do your entire combustion, you might do, like, 1.2 mil damage. And that's not great, ladies and gentlemen. Right? Like, that will 100 to O somebody that's not pressing a single thing. You know? But if you're, like, I swear fire is not that great. It's not bad. But I don't think it's amazing. I'm actually going to place it under Frost Death Knight. I'm going to place it in B tier, above Marksmanship, but under Frost Death Knight. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. Not only, I mean, it is a mage after all. We get Polymorph, we have Ice Block, we do have Cauterize, which is nice, so you can wait for Cauterize to proc and then Ice Block. But yo, if you get that insane, what is that called? What is that pre-spell? Mind Games. Yo, if you get Mind Games at like 10% health and then you get procced on Cauterize, you just kill yourself. So, like, I swear Fire Mage is kind of rough, especially versus Priests. And with Priests being better, it's going to be scary for them. So, yeah, I think Fire Mage definitely needs to see some tuning. I would like to see some damage taken out of Glass Cannon. I'd honestly like to see Glass Cannon removed completely as a talent and maybe just put some of that passively into their damage. And that way they don't have to play with 20% reduced health or 15 or whatever it is. It's reduced health either way, and reduced health is terrible for PvP. And, you know, having 790k health when everybody else has 1,000,000 health is not fun. It's not fun for anybody. So, yeah. Going on to our last class, and we're looking at the Shaman. So Restoration Shaman, I think with the cloth buff, now this is a strange way of thinking about this, but I think with the cloth buff, we're going to see more casters, and Shamans do great into casters. Not only do they have Wind Shear on a 12-second cooldown, which is great for them, they also have Grounding Totem, and they have Static Field Totem to move people around, to prevent casts, or pull them line of sight. They have Lasso to stop crowd control on them. They have Hex, which is an undispellable CC for majority of classes. Of course, Resto Druid being at the highest tier, you'll see a lot of Hex dispels, but either way, it is pretty nasty. It's pretty good. And it can actually live for quite a while with its shield wall. You have the stone totem, the stone wall totem. So they have a lot of things. So I actually think Resto Shaman's not as bad as people think. I don't think it's as great as people think, but I think it's probably about the same level as a Holy Paladin. Yeah, I think we will see Resto Shaman maybe from Absterge, because I don't think he's the best Resto Druid. He's not a bad Resto Druid at all, don't get me wrong. But I think in the AWC, we might see him pop on the Restoration Shaman. They might just go back to playing Rogue Priest Restoration Shaman, the move. So yeah, check him out. But either way, yeah, Restoration Shaman's not that bad. And with casters getting buffed, I think that's just a passive buff to Restoration Shaman stonks. And with the plate buff, or with the plate nerf, we'll see less cleaves, maybe less melee cleaves, or at least less plate melee cleaves like TSG or Ret Warrior. So we might see it, Restoration Shaman becoming better. The only thing is Ret Warrior does kind of just roll over Restoration Shamans, and Rets are getting buffed significantly. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, I'm going to place it in A tier, right next to Holy Paladin. And yeah, we'll go from there. Enhancement Shaman, I don't know how I feel about Enhance. It does okay damage, like pretty good burst damage. Has the ability to give Bloodlust to a teammate, which is really nice. It has no Mortal Strike effect. It does have decent off healing when it's needed. Has Grounding and has Wind Shear, which is great into casters. But it does die pretty easily. You have Shield Wall. You have like Ancestral Guidance, and you have Burrow, and that's like it. So I think Enhance, you can run through its cooldowns pretty quickly. I'm gonna say Enhance is like low B tier. The only reason why I'd place it where I'm placing it currently is I think, which is right above Frost Death Knight, right under Survival Hunter. I think they're pretty good into casters. Now into other melee they might struggle quite a bit. But we'll see. We'll see how it feels. But I think they're okay into casters. They're not going to do great versus mages, though, because mages can, like, freeze them over and over again. But I do think Enhance might not be terrible into shadow play, which is really nice, because shadow play is going to be significantly played again. Now, as the average player, I think Enhance has a pretty simple rotation. Nothing too difficult about it. You do have to manage flame shocks a little bit, but not really. And, yeah, you're just storm striking, which is really nice. Now, I don't know the build that's being played right now for Enhance. I don't know if it's a Lava Lash build, so that's a little bit of arrogance and ignorance on my part. But I do think Enhance is decent. It does decent damage, but I don't think it's amazing. And then we have Elemental Shaman left, and this class is a monster. Does some of the highest damage in the game. Super tanky, same level as an Enhance, really, but you're not in melee all the time, which is really nice. So I would say Ellie is going to be... I think Ellie is high B or low A. No, it's got to be better than Frost Mage. It may be better than Destro. Though I don't know. Destro might be insane. Destro might be like here. I think Destro's there. And then Ellie might be like here. Yeah, I think this is how it is. I think Ellie is better than Ret and Shadow Priest because it has so much utility versus casters. It does a lot of AoE burst damage. You can play an instant cast damage build if you plan on getting trained, and you can play like a big heavy lava burst cast build, which is gimmicky to say the least. But you can 100-0 somebody in literally 0.2 seconds flat as an elemental shaman, which is pretty funny to watch. I'm not gonna lie. Go check it out. It's super easy to do too, honestly. Not bad at all. But it's hard to set up, and at a higher rating you're going to struggle, but at a lower rating I could see you absolutely stomping. The problem is at a lower rating you're going to play defensively a lot worse, and so like if you're like 1500 range elemental shaman, you might just get ran over by a warrior the whole game and struggle significantly. But if you're playing at like a 2k plus level, you're going to do pretty well as an elemental shaman. So I think this is my tier list. Let me just check it over really quick. Yeah, I think so. I think I have the healers in the position I like them. I think Resto Druid is the best healer in the game by far, followed by Provoker, Disc Priest, Resto Shaman, Holy Paladin, Mistweaver, and Holy Priest. So I think this is probably accurate. It's probably pretty accurate, I would say. Outlaw Rogue is super underrated in my opinion. It is one of the best classes to deal with arcane mages, and I think with the buff to I think with the buff to armor on top of arcane just being good already, we'll see a little bit of arcane come in the AWC. And at a high rating and at a low rating, Outlaw also does pretty nice damage, and you can't really be kited too hard if you're playing like decently with your grappling hook and also your blade rush. So I think Outlaw Rogue is great. But yeah, I think this is my tier list. I think Sub Rogue is still the god spec of Rogue. Does a lot of damage. Shout out to Calvish and Pikaboo and Waz, of course. Waz is a king of Sub Rogue. Waz is also a king of Outlaw Rogue, though. He's just ridiculously good at Rogue in general. He's also ridiculously good at like every class in the game. But either way, yeah, I think this is my tier list. I would not be surprised if you guys want to watch some competitive World of Warcraft PvP, specifically 3v3 Arena. Check out the AWC. It is coming very soon, and we'll see some of these classes being played at the highest level by professional players. So go and check that out if you have not before. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to check out my Twitch. Boom, right there. Grimlock MMO on Twitch. I will be streaming very soon, whether it's today or tomorrow, but I will be playing Devastation Evoker. I always do, basically. And also, if you like Devastation Evoker content, please make sure to subscribe and check out my other content. Also, if you just like me, maybe subscribe. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about this tier list in the description below, or in the comments below. I'll see you guys again very soon, and have a good rest of your day. Peace.